beautiful. Great to see you. Look at the world today. Let me not waste any time. Let me show you the world. There is the sky. And if I stand still for a bit, there's not much of a wind up there. You can see that the clouds are gradually going from right to left. And it's just a nice kind of mild day. The wind is coming from the north. And, well, I can show you the lemons on the tree, because there are still some. Every now and then I pick one and take it inside so it's there when I want it. Morning, Mai. Good morning, Holly. It's lovely to see you. And look at this. The snails really like my lemon tree. That's probably why the leaves get chewed. But there's something else that's missing because it's so infested with mites. However, it is a lemon tree and it makes lemons. There must be more I can show you. There is more I can show you. Yeah, that lemon tree's had a hard life, so it's actually doing pretty well. Look, we have white Japanese anemones. Who knew? There are more than just the pink ones. But this is the only place I have the white ones. Although you can actually see they're growing up the back as well. It's the hardest place in the garden. But there they are. And it's lovely to see them, because it's no longer so dry here. So we get to have a little bit more that's growing. And look, the ghost plants are coming back because they got cut, which has to happen. See, that's all the prunings last season. But they grow back, and that's why you have to cut things back sometimes. It's why there are cycles in our lives of growing and pruning. And we were talking yesterday about pruning, but we're talking about synaptic pruning and synaptic sprouting. Getting rid of old connections you don't want and new ones you do want. Making new ones you do want. And look, here are the buds coming along for next spring. Good morning, Sanjia. Good morning. I think that might be you, Misty. Good morning, Sang Marie. It's lovely to have you walking around the garden with me. And look, there are the pink anemones that you've gotten so used to in the front garden. They're really pretty tough to live up here, but they're still beautiful. And we've got so many flowers on the hebe. I actually have to deadhead it if I don't want a million babies. Amy, it's good to see you. And look at the Nigella seed pods. I just leave them there. They're fabulous. Look at the tops. That's how the seeds get out. There you are. Yeah, I've always rather liked a wild garden. And look at all the seeds. See those little green things? That's next year's Nigella. There'll be an absolute forest of it. So, you know, cycles, right? Let me turn the camera around and get going. We're on a great line this week, talking about, it's a lot like gardening, pruning out the synaptic connections in your brain that you don't like, that fire off, and the experience you have when they fire off is not nice, and then sprouting new ones. And those are neuroscientific terms. That's how it works. Morning, beautiful beings. It's lovely to have you join us. So, one of you asked a great question, and it'll probably come back to me, but I always appreciate when you ask me great questions. Susanna, it's you. Yay! One of you asked a great question and said, well, look, you know, sometimes things trigger me, and how can I stop that? And I thought about it because, you know, that's a great question, right? So I decided we'd just carry on where we left off and talk about that today. And the short answer is you can't stop your brain from being triggered by the environment. Now, why is that? Well, the brain's job is to make sense of what's outside you, the sensory information that comes in through those sensory pathways. You know, seeing, smelling, tasting, hearing, touching things. And actually there's a whole ton of other senses like this. I think there's about 21 or 24 different kinds of sensory neurons that we have. You know, but those are the 5 big ones that we think about. So the information that comes in through those sensory pathways is like billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of bits of information every second or minute or whatever it is. And we only notice about, I think, 0.005% of it, because if we saw it all, we'd go mad. We have this wonderful filtering system in our brain that just says, oh, this is relevant and that's relevant. You know, you need to know that there's a fence there that you've got to walk around, you've got to see the steps, and, you know, but, yeah. So we have a filter. But primarily, because we need to navigate in our external environment, the brain's job is to make sense of the information that's coming from the external environment inwards, and to correlate that with the experience that you have inside yourself of the external environment. So if you're walking and you bump into a rock and it hurts your leg, then the brain goes, oh, that hurt, it wasn't nice, I better remember not to walk into rocks in the future. And so in the future, because it's going to take a snapshot of the time that you banged your leg on the rock and it hurt, because you noticed a difference and it was like, ow, it's going to be scanning for rocks on the ground that you could bump into. That's just what the brain does, and it's necessary. So you can't actually stop your brain from doing that. Unless you want to get somebody to stick a big spatula and then wave it around, but then of course you can't live. The brain must make associations, because it's sensible that if you banged into a rock and it hurt your leg, that you remember to look for rocks or things that look like rocks, so that you don't bang into them and hurt your leg again. That's what it's doing. That's just how it works. So you can't stop that from happening, because if you do, suddenly you've got no idea where you are or what's going on or anything. Everything in your world that you know what to do with is something that you have experienced already. Most of us, it is something we've experienced already. If you're small, if you're young, there's a whole lot of stuff that's new. But by the time you're 35, about 95% of everything you experience in any one day is just running on repeat. It's reruns, okay? And that's fine, because you don't want to have to learn to walk or to eat or to talk or to do your job or whatever every day. Habits, memorized things are great. Now, the temporal lobes, the sides of the brain, they're sort of above each ear and inside each ear, or between the ear and the centre of the brain. The temporal lobes are the associative centres. That's where the brain puts this with that and says, oh, well, that's a tree and that's a tree. They're not the same, but they're both trees. And this is a flower, and it looks like a lily, but it's not a lily, and it looks a bit like a sunflower. So it makes associations, but it also stores the differences. It wires them all together, those neural nets I've been talking about. A lot of the associative part is done in the temporal lobes on either side of your head. And they're the ones that are, because your senses are constantly scanning the environment unconsciously. You don't do this consciously. The senses are always getting information. The brain is processing the information, and it goes, it comes in the sensory pathways. It goes into the thalamus or the thalami, which are sort of on the outside of the emotional brain, the centre of the brain, which is like a big junction box, as Joe sees it. Joe Dispenza, the man I've learned so much from, because the way he presents it, which is so sensible, it's like a big junction box for all that information. And I know that the thalamus certainly sends a lot of information to the associative centres, or it goes to the associative centres and looks for matches. God, I got a bone up on my neuroscience. I've forgotten. I've read it, but I've forgotten. I need to read that book again. But there's, that's what happens. The information comes to the thalamus and it gets processed, and all different parts of the brain are recruited and used. Elsa! It's been ages! Different parts of the brain are used to process that information, decide if there are threats, decide if there are opportunities, decide if we like it, decide if we don't, all of that. But it's the temporal lobes that store those associations, the things that the brain compares to and says, well, this is good and that isn't. And then, of course, if the neural net goes off, it says, oh, that was a rock, I banged my shin into it, it really hurt, I don't want to do that again. The neurochemical stimulus is going to be a memory of pain, and that's just what happens. So, to stay with the analogy or the metaphor, the analogy, you simply can't get rid of all the rocks on the ground in your environment. It's not possible. Unless you want to go and live in a small box, where you can control everything and regulate everything and say, well, there are no rocks in this box, and as long as I'm inside this box, I know I'm safe. And that is one way to cope, but it can be a very limiting, very small life. It generally is when you do that. And this can happen. Perhaps a more relatable example is people who have food allergies. They just have to expend so much energy avoiding the foods that could make them really sick. I'm not saying it's not real or they should just ignore it, but it becomes a box. And the same thing is with trauma. You're thinking, oh, that kind of situation and that kind of person, and it triggers it off. You cannot avoid the triggers in the environment. because of this is how the brain works. So what do? What I have learned to do, and remember it's about having the tools to actually deal with this stuff. Robin, good morning! Because it's, it's one thing to understand it, and it's another, and to actually go, oh, well, that makes sense, but it's another thing to apply it. And I'm not interested in just understanding it, because I can really understand how miserable I am, but I want to change that. I want to do something to not be miserable, right? So what I have learned to do, and the change that's happened in me, is the point at which I start thinking, gee, I actually know how to deal with this. And hopefully I'll get to talk about how to do that. But we've been talking about it all week, right? Use heart coherence and brain coherence to change your state of being. And there comes a point when you get a little bit good at that, where you think, actually, man, I dealt with that crappy feeling when it came up before. Here's another crappy feeling. I can deal with this one. I can turn it down. Instead of lasting for 4 days like I'm used to it lasting, it might last half an hour, and that's progress. Wow, that's awesome. So you start to feel some degree of control and some degree of empowerment about the fact that when something triggers you, now it becomes something that you can deal with, and you're getting more skilled at dealing with it. And so you see a different opportunity when the thing goes off. It's still, oh shit, that hurts. But instead of, oh shit, it hurts, and I know how this is going to hurt, and I know where this is going to go, and you just go into the same old spiral of whatever it is, you have tools that you can break that the old pattern that's so familiar, that's however long it is, you can do something about it. So the new thing that you can perceive in that same old situation is, hey, I now have the tools to overcome my emotional reaction, and I know that if I settle my brain and body back down right into here and now, because if my brain has gone off and my body's gone off into an old emotional reaction, that is the past, right? So I've gone back to the past. Something in my present has triggered my body and my brain back into the past. Oh, right. I have to stop doing that. And I know that that painful feeling and that painful memory means that my brain has become incoherent and my heart has become incoherent. So, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to put my attention in my heart, start breathing in and out of there? Because I know that if I just can do that for even a few minutes, it's going to make me a little bit more coherent in my heart. Can I practice, like we talked about the other day, pasting my awareness on the walls or the space around me, so that I'm taking my attention off that thing that used to go boom, and then I'll get sucked into it for however long and just go, oh God, this is horrible, and I can't get out of it. So it becomes a skill. It becomes an opportunity to realize that you can master your reactions to triggers in your environment. And the very first time you do that, it's like, oh my God, I did it. Wow. I know how that used to go, and shit, it didn't anymore. Wow. And of course you start to feel something different about yourself when you realize that you actually can overcome these things that before just would blow you around like a strong wind, would just swallow you up for however long before they spat you out, So to realize that every time something triggers an old memory that you thought was, you dealt with it, but here it is again, it just means that there's another trigger in the environment that you were so busy responding to all the other triggers that you have since rewired and defused that you didn't even notice that one. And now that your life has got a bit calmer because you're better at regulating yourself, you're better at calming your body back and your mind back down, bringing it back into the present moment so that you are no longer stuck in the emotion of the past. You're no longer obsessing about something awful that might happen in the future. You've learned that when that happens, that is your signal. That is your flashing, beautiful coloured light that says, hey, you know what to do. Put your attention in your heart. Breathe in and out. Do it for as long as it takes. And you realise that you're willing at some stage. You realise that you're willing to do it for as long as it takes. Because, it's just so worth it. Oh yeah, tapping it. Yep. That tapping on the head and then tapping on the heart is a body talk kind of version of the same thing. Notice head, heart, same thing. See, your wonderful associative brain has made the connections, Susanna. You're absolutely right. Ah, Arika, it's lovely to see you. I don't actually do messages, sweetie, but if you got a question, feel free to ask. I may address it in a future live. Because I'm a coach, you see. I'm not a medium. I could be, but I choose not to be. I really want people to get their own information from themselves, because that's the best way, and it's the most pure, and it's the most real, it's the most true. And I love to help people do that. So that's what I'm talking about today. Let me check the clock. All right, that's good. So, to realise when the shit comes up, it's an opportunity. It's actually an opportunity for me to increase my skill at managing myself and my emotions, managing my brain, realising that if I'm feeling awful, I've become incoherent. So, I've become incoherent. So how am I going to make myself more coherent? Well, that's the thing about the future, Arika. And that means you're not present. You see, you're off in the future rather than present here and now. So the only advice I'm going to give you is what we'll practice now, because it's such a good thing to do. Because you got to get your attention off your fears. This might sound stupid, but if you're off there in the future saying, oh, well, will I do this? Is it going to work out? You are literally making love in the quantum field to all of those scary possibilities that might or might not work. But if you come back right into here and now and change your state of being to be a little bit more towards feeling confident that it's all going to go fine, even though you can't work out how it's going to be because you don't know, because it's unknown, right? We fear the unknown. So if you can get more comfortable being in the unknown, then you're going to go into the future with that level of increased comfort, and you're going to go into your future creating from that space instead of going, oh, is this going to be all right? That's what creates your future, honey. It's not having somebody say, oh, it's going to be all right. No, the minute you forget about the fact that I say, oh, it's going to be fine, you'll be back to worrying again. It's what we all do. We have to find it in ourselves. So, bring your awareness. And everybody has got something that they're a bit scared about, or a bit pissed off about, or a bit sad about, or whatever it is. You know, that feeling that got kicked up in you the other day, or the thing you are concerned about in the future. The thing you are concerned about in your future, or the thing you're like, not even concerned, but you're just like, how's it going to be? And why do I wobble about this? Why am I not certain, you know? So bring your attention into the centre of your chest, where your heart is, where your heart centre is really. Put your attention in there. You know, forget about, or take your attention off the external world. Put your attention in the centre of your chest, and literally, as you put your attention there, breathe in and out of it. Just put all your attention in the centre of your chest. There's nothing else right now. Put your attention there. As soon as you do that, you make your head and your heart communicate better with each other. That's just what happens. That's science. It's a fact. So if you feel any kind of fear 5 minutes from now about, oh, that thing, you know, put your attention back in there briefly and just take a breath. And I breathe in and I imagine how I want to feel, and then I breathe out and kind of, settle back into my heart. I do this because I have weird shit come up in my head, and it's like, no, I want to come back into my heart. And just doing that, the wiggles, the anxiety, it starts to evaporate. And it's lovely, Arika. You're right, it is. And it's science. It's repeatable. You can do this whenever you start to wonder and think, oh, is it going to be okay? That person, that place, that, you know, did I bring the right things? Did I leave the right things behind? Just come back into your heart. It's very powerful. It's science. It's repeatable. You don't need me telling you what to do. It's easier having somebody guide you, but you can do this. So that's the first thing. It's just to come into your heart. And there's a heart math technique called the freeze frame. And we're not going to go through it properly, but 5 steps, right? Freeze frame, hit the pause button, just like we did, saying, hey, take your attention off the thing you're concerned about. Just drop it. Stop. Freeze frame. Put your attention in your heart. This is what I learned from them. It's what I learned from Dr. Joe Dispenza too, but this is their technique. 20 years before, Anyway, put your attention in your heart and breathe in and out of there. That's step 3. Put your attention there, breathe in and out of there. And then sincerely attempt to feel the feeling that you want to feel, or feel a good feeling. It does stop the doubting, Elsa, because it makes you more coherent. Sincerely attempt to feel a good feeling, even if it's just, relief, or just appreciation or gratitude, whatever it is you want to feel, or a good feeling that you can remember, like loving on a pet or a friend or a beautiful day, a sunset, whatever. Just bring up a good feeling. That's step 4. Push the pause button, put your attention in your heart, breathe in and out of there, and bring up some kind of memory of a good feeling or something beautiful that you can appreciate. That's step 4. Very important to do that until you have something, at least in your mind, a memory, even if you don't feel an emotional shift, just putting your attention on something beautiful and holding in your awareness in your heart. And when you've done that for a little while, and I can feel, by the way, that you're all trying this, you're all playing this, I can feel it shift, because we're all connected quantumly. When you've done that for a little while and you start to feel something is a little bit different, you don't have to feel ecstatic, you just have to wait for the kind of feeling that something's shifted. Then you can ask your heart, literally, heart, what is a more efficient response to this situation? One that will bring me less stress in future. I know those might sound like funny words, but they are the heart math words, and they've experimented for a long time to find them. Dear heart, what is a more efficient response for me to have in this situation? One that will bring me less stress in the future. And then listen, just wait, just hold that question in your heart. And you might get an answer straight away, because the heart's pretty businesslike. It's not all ooshy-gooshy, it just boom, there's the answer. And sometimes you won't. And it'll come to you later when you're not seeking it. So that creates heart coherence, and I can feel that you are feeling it as you explore it. And so doubt, you see, and fear and all those things come from having an incoherent heart. And an incoherent heart creates an incoherent brain. An incoherent brain creates an incoherent heart as well. It's a two-way communication. But 95% of the information that flows between the heart and the brain goes from the heart up. So if you manage the state of your heart, if you make your heart more coherent, your brain is going to get more coherent, and that's why you feel better. That's why you think, oh shit, my doubt's kind of gone. What happened? I wasn't even paying attention to what I was trying to feel better about. I was just putting my attention in my heart and breathing and trying a little bit to generate some kind of better emotion, or just to even feel neutral, until I felt a shift, and then, oh, that's what happens. That's literally what happens. It's really simple and really powerful. And I'm out of time. Now it's Friday, what the hell. So that's the thing, you see. And then when you ask your heart and you listen for the answer, then you get the message that you want, Arika. Then it comes to you, and it's yours, and it's direct, and you know the truth of it. And in 5 minutes' time, if you need to do it again, you can. So you don't have to ask anyone else. I love that. So, big love. It's been an amazing week. It's been a short week, but it's been an amazing week. I have loved having these conversations with you. I look forward to next week. Look out for resonant replays over the weekend. I do always put up the ones that say, pick me! Oh, Mike. Big love to you too. Big love to all of you. Thank you for joining with me and being part of what we create together. I'll see you again on Sunday, Monday. Bye-bye.